diabetes, obesity, all aspects of cardiometabolic disorder would feature in. But yes, there are a lot of patients who would come to you who have only hypertension as a diagnosed condition. And we would need to cater only to hypertension specifically, at least some sort of understanding of how nutritional interventions would help, would probably, make our prescription better. When we talk about the actual management of hypertension, because it's a lifestyle disorder, so I've always said that it is a lifestyle management that needs to be brought in. So it's not only weight loss or it's not only salt reduction that we look at. We would have to look at behavioral changes. We would look at not only a day-to-day nutrition, but also the complete dietary pattern. So this is what you have been eating over a period of time and what you're going to be eating over a period of time. One single instance of reducing salt is not going to help you manage hypertension. So it is dietary patterns that we ultimately look at. There have been n number of diets that have come in. People would say, let's go for a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet or an Ornish diet. But in all honesty, each diet has to be individualized, tailor-made, customized as per the patient who's there in front of you. The most probably popular and the most effective diets till now for hypertension have been Mediterranean and the DASH diet. No two, there aren't any questions about it. Yes, these two have been voted. They have been, through research, through years of interventions, we have found out it's the Mediterranean and the DASH diet that are the best. But the question is, when do we use Mediterranean? When do we use DASH diet in a patient? The question is, there is something called as a therapeutic lifestyle change diet, the TLC diet, which the American Heart Association has been talking about. When do you actually land up using these? We cannot generalize. We can't say that we have a patient of hypertension, we are going to give a DASH diet because we like it, or we are going to give a Mediterranean diet because we like it. Ultimately, believe me, if you are, whichever country you are in, each diet will have to be customized as per what your country is. I have always said olive oil is a very good oil, but does it suit your country? Does it suit the weather? Does it suit the lifestyle? Does it suit the cooking methodology that you have? So be very careful about what are you trying to include. We cannot copy paste, we cannot replicate. But yes, there are certain guidelines. Now, when we talk about the European guidelines, they would usually talk about a Mediterranean diet because that is what their regional preferences for food is. When we talk about American guidelines, that is the American Heart Association, they would talk about the DASH diet. Both diets talk about reducing processed foods. Both diet talk about increasing complex carbs and improving the fatty acid profiles. Now, how you do it? Probably if we are in India, we will not have a complete DASH or a Mediterranean diet, because in all honesty, if you look at a DASH diet, it says almost 5 to 8 exchanges of fruits and vegetables in a day. 5 to 8 exchanges is practically 500 to 800 grams of fruits and vegetables in a day. So where would our cereals go? Where would the pulses go? Where would the other sources of the dietary aspects, the dietary components go? So yes, we will have to customize it for an Indian setting. We will have to start including, now DASH says the preference should be on raw fruits and vegetables. So for us, probably we'll have to figure out a balance between cooked and raw foods. When we talk about Mediterranean diet, Mediterranean again is more of unprocessed foods. So that is something that we can take. But probably giving a fish-based diet all over India would not be a very practical solution for us. So we need to find out what are our protein sources, what are our healthy fat sources, and then prepare a diet. But yes, when we talk about CVD prevention, ultimately, a person has hypertension. Now, the major issue with hypertension is that it is a disease in itself and it is a risk factor for various diseases. So, CVD mortality, morbidity goes up if a person already has hypertension. Now, in those cases, we don't stick to a particular diet. What we tell that person is regulate your diet on a daily basis. If today you are doing intermittent fasting and tomorrow you are doing a keto and the third day you do a balanced diet, it is of no use. Honestly, it is of no use. I will say probably you are harming your body more than benefiting it. So have a balanced diet throughout. And that is probably the key to having a good food pattern or a dietary pattern through your life. You can probably look at diet diversity as well. That would be something that would be of a lot of benefit for you. So look at what your diet diversity is. Look at how frequently or how balanced are you ultimately eating. How much of preserved foods is there? Now there's a lot of talk about gluten, probably that gluten should, we should get the gluten down in the diet. I agree, gluten is pro-inflammatory, but we as Indians have been consuming gluten for centuries together. There has been some kind of an adaptation in our body at least. So completely eliminating gluten may not be the solution for everyone. It is a very extreme step for us to ask each and every person to eliminate. Yes, for some people it may be possible and it would do well, but completely eliminating may not be very sustainable as well, because we've been eating gluten for so long. We are used to having, if you tell a Punjabi stop having roti, it's going to be as bad as telling a South Indian to stop having rice. So again, balance, try and see what your cultural preferences are. And yes, coming to a TLC diet now, the therapeutic lifestyle diet, or the therapeutic lifestyle change diet as we say, is a diet which we prescribe when we see that there is dyslipidemia along with hypertension. Whenever you are looking at a combination of hypertension with the other comorbidities of lifestyle disorders, always try and think about introducing the TLC. The TLC is very similar to a DASH diet or the AHA diet that has been given, except for the fact that TLC says the total cholesterol intake should be less than 200 milligrams, or at all the other places, it is 300 milligrams. So again, no one says stop cholesterol. Cholesterol is needed by our body until and unless specifically indicated. Please do not restrict cholesterol completely from the diet. In short, if you're looking at what do you finally give your patient, your saturated fats should be less than 10%. When you are balancing the diet, the question is, what do you increase? So if your fat percentage would remain the same, say about 25 to 30%, but within that 25 to 30%, you will replace saturated fats and trans fatty acids with your PUFAs and MUFAs. So the ratios are going to change. Similarly, within carbohydrates, from your processed foods, from your maida, from your refined flours, you shift to whole grains. You shift to more complex carbohydrates. Salt should be less than 5 grams per day. Now, if a person has been diagnosed with hypertension already, it is always better to get the salt down to 3 grams per day. And to this, you add about 30 grams of unsalted nuts per day. It's very important we tell them that the nuts have to be unsalted and not fried. Because a lot of times you will have people that, yes, we have kaju, we have cashew, we have badam, we have almonds, but they would either be fried or they would be sprinkled with salt. So they have to be unsalted, they have to be not fried. A minimum of 30 to 45 grams of whole grains should be given every day. minimum 200 grams of fruits and 200 grams of vegetables. So we are not saying go to 800 grams, but at least 400 grams of fruits and vegetables should be included in the diet, which is a very practical suggestion. It is something that is possible, easily possible for us to do. For people who consume fish, it should be at least 1 to 2 times per week. Again, we are looking at, shearfish, mackerels, salmon, tuna. Those are the kind of fishes, the oily fishes. If a person is not a fish eater, then the protein intake has to be higher from other vegetarian sources, or chicken if the person consumes chicken. Egg is also acceptable. Please consume egg whole. Don't remove the yolk and throw it away. Again, until and unless specifically indicated, don't throw away the egg yolk. The egg itself, when you have the whole egg, it will give you a lot more nutrition than only the albumin, the egg white that you want to have. And yes, this is what a general diet would be, but there's a lot of question that comes in when people ask me, beyond this, what? Ye to we will give. This is something that we will give, that we give already. Beyond this, what? What else are the food items that specifically bring down your blood pressure levels? Now, one of the major things is chlorogenic acid. When you add that has an antihypertensive effect. It also reduces the homocysteine levels. And this is found in coffee beans, apples, pears, tomatoes, and blueberries. And that's the reason you will find, if you search the internet for smoothies for hypertension, most of them will have berries in it, because these berries have chlorogenic acid in them, which reduce your blood pressure. The other is onion and garlic, which I think all of us know. It has quercetin in it, but what we probably don't know is how often to give and how much to give. So about 2 to 4 cloves of garlic will reduce the blood pressure for up to 24 hours. If you are looking at a person who has uncontrolled hypertension, in that case, you may have to give garlic every 6 hours, because the peak that the garlic is, the peak time of action for garlic is about 2 to 6 hours. So if you are looking at someone who's uncontrolled, then up to 6 hours. And tea, yes, green tea does reduce hypertension, but then it has drug nutrient interactions with ACE inhibitors, and it is always better to give at least 3 hours to 4 hours of gap between your tea, the green tea specifically, and the antihypertensive medications that you're having. Now, there are lots of other foods that have been proposed as well. They have not been supported very well with research, but a lot of people have been using them. So you have something like called as natto, which is fermented soya beans, and this produces an action which is similar to your angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. Ginger again lowers blood pressure. Hawthorn is something that has been proposed a lot, and it's also called as Crataegus. There are a lot of times when you find that there is venous stasis in the body, and that is when hawthorn works well. But again, it has still not been completely or thoroughly studied with research or backed with research. Ginkgo has shown good effects in animal studies. So it causes dilation of blood vessels, and thus there's vasodilation, so the blood pressure would go down. And then you have a lot of short chain peptides which you find in oily fishes, which again replicate the effect of ACE inhibitors. Nutraceuticals is something that you will find in the market, you will come across, but please be sure which ones are actually helpful. So red yeast rice is helpful, but then this should be used when the person has dyslipidemia or hypercholesteremia, because it reduces your LDL cholesterol levels as well. When you have a person who is probably pre-diabetic, then this becomes a very good supplement to go with. Polyphenols, yes, I think most of us would land up using polyphenols already who are working with NCDs, because they have a very strong antioxidant effect. Berberine helps again. It has a very similar effect as red yeast. Folic acid is something that probably people forget because we are trying to make a very balanced diet. We are trying to give all other these, small tidbits, but folic acid will have a major role to play in your tetrahydrofolate methyl cycle. Back to our biochemistry basics, it is important. If your folic acid deficiencies are there, it will increase your CVD risk because your homocysteine levels are going to go up and it will lead to endothelial dysfunction. There are lots of common drug nutrient interactions that we come across, and probably the gist of all of this that is there on the slide is that alcohol, grapefruit, um, maybe excess of all of these extra food items, excess of garlic and excess of ginger, ginkgo, ginseng, all of that would create an issue, specifically if a person is on anticoagulants and statins or HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors. So those are the points where you have to be very careful about what are the extra foods that you are putting into the diet. And I would like to say, probably we all have been talking about salt a lot. Let's take it a little ahead and realize that it is not only salt which is an etiology or an aggravating factor. Salt is a small component. Major, yes, but it is small. We have to talk about sugar as well, because and this sugar is simple carbs that I'm talking about. So your maida, bakery products, your simple sugar, jaggery, honey, all, you know, all types of sugars, whatever name you take, is going to contribute to hypertension because it will lead to sodium retention. It will reduce the nitric oxide production in the body, and it will lead to vasoconstriction. And yes, when we talk about salt, very often the question comes, should I opt for a low sodium salt? Is that better? There are companies which say that they are sodium free, they are low sodium, sodium light salt. Please be sure that it is the total sodium that you need to look at. And from there, you calculate how much salt does the patient need. It is not based on the commercial products that are available in the market, be it salt, be it regular salt or low salt. Irrespective of that, if your sodium consumption or the salt intake has to be 3 grams per day, irrespective of what salt you take, stick to 3 grams only. Now, the point is, you have reduced the salt for a person. Believe me, as alcohol, salt and sugar are also addictive. So it is, the moment you reduce it, the taste will go. And these some natural salt substitutes are important. This is something that I practice on a very regular basis. I ask them to add chili flakes, different herbs, spices, basil, thyme, vinegar. Homemade vinegar would be best, onion, ginger, to enhance the taste. Taste is all about learning. What I have always said is we have learned the taste of salt, and somewhere we'll have to unlearn this salt. This. When we talk about sodium potassium pumps, we will talk about vasodilation, and we need to talk about uh, all nutrients. We cannot stick to sodium only. And all of this leads to vasodilation. So it is of benefit to start increasing potassium as well. Magnesium calcium mechanisms also play a role. Ultimately, the point is all nutrients are important. Let's not obsess only about sodium. Magnesium deficiencies would also lead to vasoconstriction. It will lead to endothelial dysfunctions. It will lead to thromboxane, increase in the thromboxane levels and insulin resistance. Pregnancy-induced hypertension, again, the principle is very similar, but yes, here the salt restrictions may be very severe. Here, probably you would have to look at epileptic attacks, so preeclampsia, eclampsia. You're looking at the hypertension, the blood pressure levels going up, edema. So here, yes, I would agree, salt is very important, and it is not only salt in that case. We are talking about sodium. So whatever sodium is coming from the food also, the invisible sodium, as I call it, please be sure that you are monitoring those levels as well. And yes, there have been researchers which say that probably ketone body supplementation would help in hypertension or reducing blood pressure. There have been n number of benefits that have been proposed, but the point is, again, this approach has been studied in patients with heart failure. So when we read research papers, we should see what was the population that was studied. This population was of patients with heart failure. It is in those patients when ketone supplementation was given, for some of them, the ejection fraction was improved. And this was for both acute and chronic heart failure patients. So let's not jump to conclusions, and let's not start supplementing things which probably have not been completely studied. So I think that's it from me. And
It's really very short and sweet, and every sentence carried advice, information, and a very uh, logical, and every sentence of what you spoke for the last 10 minutes is full of information and very very useful, especially for the practitioners. It is very useful, and also some myths were also bursted, like about instead of talking of salt, you also spoke about sugars. That's which is very very good. Anyway, we'll come to that take home messages at the end, but if you have any questions, anybody has any questions, we can start off with this. uh, any questions,
Uh,
either in Zoom or Facebook, or else I have one question to begin with.
Not a question, I guess. Marina is saying usually we restrict coffee because of caffeine, which increases cardiac rhythm and blood pressure. When you were mentioning about the coffee, she has commented this regarding the caffeine.
right. Honestly, if we are looking at true coffee beans, those would get restricted. But the one that we have, what we eat, what we consume usually, that is just 30% coffee and the rest of it is chicory.
Mhm.
So that may not, uh, those cases, yes, we can give coffee. But when we are looking at uncontrolled hypertension, in those cases, yes, I would agree that pure coffee or the Brazilian coffee, that should be restricted.
What about filter coffee? Filter
Ma'am,
coffee with
filter coffee is also similar. It's
okay,
same 30-40%
yeah,
coffee that
okay.
we have.
So
Okay.
you've been working with hypertensive patients of various and also various components like PIH or normal person or CBD, obesity, or in different aspects. So and you also uh, measured 2 lakhs people for BP measurement you have done. So, what are the striking aspects you observed? Like, repeatedly it will come, and we keep seeing the patients repeatedly. So many things keep coming. Diet-wise, also as a behavior-wise, anything, I mean, in particular that have you come across repeatedly?
Ma'am, I think behavior wise is what I'll talk first.
Mm.
Unfortunately, out of these people that we've screened, and that's a pattern we've seen all over the world. So this May measurement happens all over the world. Uh, we've seen that 50% of the people are not aware that they're hypertensive. They have not got it checked, and they'll end up being hypertensive. So the burden of undiagnosed hypertension is very high. Now, out of the 50% who know they are hypertensive, 50% do not have their blood pressure controlled.
Okay.
And the 50% and there's also only 50% of them are actually consuming medication, the actual
Okay.
medication that should be prescribed. People who are consuming, also 50% of them do not have their blood pressure controlled.
Okay.
One of the major reasons, apart from yes awareness, was that they do not get their blood pressure checked regularly.
Okay.
So that is one behavioral aspect which probably all healthcare professionals need to start working on and start advising home blood pressure measurement. That's as far as probably behavior goes. The other point with behavior is hypertension. That's something I've always said. Hypertension is like a distant cousin of obesity and diabetes. So everyone will say, oh my God, my weight is up by 2 kgs, 1 kg, 5 kgs. But no one would, or very rarely would someone say that, oh my God, my blood pressure is up by so much. It's like,
Right.
okay, it's up. It's a silent killer, I know. But it's up, and they'll say, fair enough. You know, we don't have any symptoms, so it's fine. We are managing it. My body is managing it. So that component also leads to a lot of further complications. The next, with respect to diet, is, I would say, this was a public health screening. So the diet diversity is very low.
Okay.
The other point is the dietary patterns that we follow. So most of these people did not have a healthy pattern per se. They would
Okay.
have, you know, maybe processed foods at least 3 to 4 times a week.
Okay.
People don't realize, when you tell them processed foods, they don't even realize what processed foods are. They will say, toast, yes, toast so we have. So evening tea, we have toast. Or we'll have just 2 biscuits. We are having only 2 biscuits. And it's like 2 biscuits on a daily basis, full of refined flour.
There is the sugar, there is salt, and there is
Refined flour.
refined flour
Refined flour.
and trans fats.
And trans fats. Now, unfortunately, again, marketing has a very huge influence.
Digestive
Because,
biscuits.
yes, you have no whole wheat flour biscuit and digestive biscuit and brown bread. Honestly, I'm yet to see a lot of companies coming up with actual whole wheat bread. From what I have eaten, if you have a whole wheat bread, just a single slice or 2 slices will fill you. They are dry and they will fill you. But the brown bread that we have, we can consume the whole, the whole loaf. So that, from a dietary perspective, were points, and which somewhere I feel we should take it further and find out what are the micronutrient deficiencies that these people have. Macro, probably protein, fats and carbs, we have enough. It's the micronutrients that go missing. We don't know what are hidden fats. We don't know what is hidden sugar, what is hidden salt. A lot of food items, like honestly, the controversy with egg, people will throw away the yolk, but will not mind having. In Pune, we have vada pav.
Vada pav.
So people will not having 2 vada pavs in one go.
True.
Yeah, but they really don't know. I think this is all to do with the awareness. They really don't know the difference. They think the moment they think about the yellow, it's something to be discarded. So the patients, when they came, immediately they say, "I'm only eating egg whites."
Egg whites.
Before you tell, also
Yeah.
they keep
Yeah.
telling you.
And I don't add sugar to my tea.
No sugar
But
to my tea.
everywhere else, they would be jaggery and sugar and honey. So they'll say, no, sugar is not healthy, but I add jaggery.
Instead of sugar, I'm adding jaggery or
Jaggery.
honey. So
And also there are, like, I eat one egg with yellow and rest all egg whites.
Yes. Yes. No,
So
that's true.
yeah, we have few questions on Zoom. Marina, she's asking, what is your opinion on low sodium salt, that is like potassium salt?
So when we say low sodium, I doubt if there is a salt which is pure potassium salt. So KCl, you will not get a salt that is KCl. It is NaCl with KCl, and the combination just changes.
Hmm.
Now, to give you an example, the regular salt that we have will have 38 milligrams of sodium in it. The low sodium salt has barely 32.
Okay.
So
Okay.
in 100 grams, you are looking at 38 and 32. Not
Very.
a very huge difference. So the best advice that I give is, if we are supposed to give 5 grams of salt through the day, then we calculate from their reverse. We don't say that you are having low sodium, so you can have low sodium how much ever you want. Ultimately, it is you have to have 2400 milligrams, 1800, 1600, 1200, how much? Generally, we don't go below 1500 milligrams of sodium, because below 1500 means through the diet also the invisible sodium has to be reduced to a very great extent.
Right. Right. Evelyn Kaur is asking which form of sugar can be taken by hypertension patients?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So any form of sugar can be taken. The more processed it is, the less nutrient value will it have. But ultimately, again, like salt, sugar also should be restricted. I am not saying if a person is not hypertensive, so you have to, I'm sorry, if the person is not diabetic, you have to stop sugar altogether. But processed sugar needs to be restricted. Yes, jaggery will be a better option, but in all honesty, the jaggery that was made maybe 20, 30 years back in those iron vats is not being done. It is done in factories now on steel. So the iron that we used to say that jaggery is rich in iron will not, that benefit will not be there. Um, I think it is about 5% of the total calories can come from your sugar.
Sugar. ICMR recommends up to 20 to
20
25
grams.
grams. Yeah.
20 grams.
Okay, Gauri, Dr. M. Gauri is asking, do we suggest sea fish or freshwater fish? My view, sea fish has more sodium content. Am I correct or wrong? That's her question.
Yes. So sea fish does have more sodium. It will have more iodine as well. But ultimately, uh, once you cook it, once you are serving it, the portion size lands up being less. So when we talk about fish, it will be more on the basis of it's a fatty fish or it's a lean fish. So generally, it is the oily fishes that we recommend, which are salmon, tuna, mackerel. In Maharashtra, they are bangda and surmai or shearfish. So those are the fishes that would have the best benefits because the omega-3 composition is better with them.
Okay. Okay, we have another question on Facebook. Samata, ma'am, great presentation. Do you suggest a low sodium salt for your patients?
I don't suggest low sodium, and that has got nothing to do with because it's low sodium or high sodium. It is because the moment I tell them that this is low sodium, the control that they have psychologically somewhere that goes. So
Right.
patients start feeling that, okay, this is so low sodium, I can have more of this. That's the only reason I don't go very strong on low sodium salt.
Okay. Since long we have been blaming only salt, now we need to think more about sugar and all. So Samta is asking another question. What should be a treatment for low hypertension, ma'am?
Low blood pressure is a completely different story altogether. It has a different pathology. And I think it's a very good question because a lot of times we confuse the two. In hypertension, we are reducing salt. So in hypertension, let's increase salt. It is
Exactly.
not as straight as that. Usually, if the blood pressure levels are 90 by 60, that's the lower cutoff. And if it's up till that cutoff, it is acceptable. If the person doesn't have symptoms, it is acceptable. But yes, the moment the symptoms start coming, hydration is something that you should look at first. Look at the magnesium intake. and then maybe think of salt.
Okay.
Don't make salt the first option. But yes, in ICU, that's a very quick way because we want to suddenly increase. So we give those salt capsules. That's in ICU in a critical care situation. But if you are talking about an OPD patient, or um, even in inpatients and not critically ill patients, then I would say look at hydration, look at sodium, potassium, both. Uh, Again, the other point is dehydration. When a person has dehydration, don't give only water, give sodium, potassium, and an acid with it. So the Nimbu Pani that we give, that's actually the best way of rehydrating, and that would raise the blood pressure levels as well.
Yeah.
What are the cutoff points, Mansi, for hypertension, like a mild, moderate, and high?
Ma'am, if you look at the AHA has come up with guidelines, but unfortunately they have not been accepted worldwide. So the global guidelines right now say that 139 by 89 is the first cutoff. It is acceptable in geriatric patients. It can be 149 by 90, which is again acceptable. Uh, and then it is 10-10, it increases by 10-10, so 149 by
10 points.
99, and yes, that is how it goes. But diastolic is usually given more significance.
Significance.
Right.
Then there is a point of where we see the difference between the diastolic and the systolic. So that is the difference, the pulse pressure that we see, that should not be very wide or too small.
Okay.
Okay.
I have another question, Mansi. So you have suggested the ginkgo biloba, right? So what form you are suggesting it, as a nutraceutical, or like what form
Ginkgo?
is ginkgo biloba?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
ginkgo, generally the roots, if you have them, they
Okay.
help a lot. Then you have ginkgo candies that come.
Okay.
For people who would not like to have ginkgo roots, then ginkgo candies probably can be given. But ultimately, ginkgo again has not been
Proven.
established as an antihypertensive. So
Okay.
personally, if you ask me, I don't prescribe ginkgo.
Ginkgo. Okay.
I don't. I have a lot of patients who would say that we are consuming it,
Okay.
but prescription, I don't give a prescription of ginkgo.
Okay. Okay.
Hawthorn, yes, Hawthorn, the
Yeah.
nutraceutical that you get in the market,
Market.
Crataegus,
Huh.
that yes.
That
But then
is.
that is when venous stasis and heart failure
Hmm.
is evident, or we are looking at those complications.
Okay. Okay, Surinder Reddy is asking, ma'am, great presentation. Can you elaborate what is vitamin K role in blood pressure?
Vitamin K. So again, honestly, if you ask me, um, you can't take single vitamins. Vitamin K, when we talk about it, it is more in relation when a person is on anticoagulants. So if a person is on anticoagulants, we are expecting probably a valve replacement or a valve surgery that has been done. And because of warfarin and vitamin K interaction, we will reduce the vitamin K. But per se, individually, if a person is hypertensive, in those cases, we don't increase or decrease vitamin K specifically. But if a person is on warfarin, the anticoagulants, then yes, you will have to reduce vitamin K from the diet.
Okay. So Evelyn Kaur is asking, in case of sugar exchange, what is your thought about sugarcane juice?
Avleen, ultimately, it's again sugar.
Right.
Be it sugar cane juice, be it sugar, it's ultimately
Sugar
sugar.
with hydration.
It's just, it's hydration. It's, you've diluted it a little in water, but it's heavy on sugar. So yes, if your blood sugar levels are managed, if you are not having sugarcane juice on a very regular basis, it's fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. I mean, why not? But if you're having that, then make sure that you're burning it out as well.
Okay.
It's a very common concept. Can we have ghee or not?
Mm.
Older generations had lots of ghee, but then the kind of workout that they did was very different. They were able to utilize that ghee for energy production. So there's a very simple example that I give. In older times, we are looking at maybe warriors, kings, and all who used to lift 15 to 20 kgs of sword. They used to lift that sword and fight.
Mm.
And today, when I was ordering my laptop yesterday, and I was saying, "Acha, what is the weight of the laptop? The lightest weight is what I will order."
Yeah,
So
because you have to carry backpack and all, you have to carry it.
we have to carry it, but then, which means we have changed. The bodies have changed.
So
We
much.
cannot lift a 15 kg sword and fight now. With a
Right.
single hand. I'd have to probably lift it with both hands.
True.
So we can't have the same thing. Have little bit of ghee and burn it. Ultimately, you have 25 to 30% of fats that you can have. Within that, less than 7% of saturated fats. You want to have ghee, you adjust it in that. That's
Mm.
how I
Right.
get.
Very true. So Samta is asking, BP being with normal range pulse rate being above 90 per minute, is it okay?
Above 90 is fair enough. Again, see if there's any pathology. I mean, I'm talking about something very extreme, say hyperthyroidism. You will have a pulse rate that is higher. A person who is not very used to exercising, thoda bhi, if that person walks, the pulse would go up. Until and unless you are experiencing palpitations, the blood pressure is fluctuating, the pulse is fluctuating. You should be fair enough. And the more you exercise, the more your heart becomes stronger and the pulse would go down. That's why, you have the athletes who will have a lower pulse.
Right. So Richa Srivastava is asking, I mean, I guess you have answered this, but still I'll just repeat the question. Great presentation, Mansi. What is your take on caffeine in relation with blood pressure? A lot of people generally go for a cup of coffee if they're having low blood pressure.
Now, low blood pressure and caffeine is again slightly different because it uh, caffeine is a very potent you know energizer for us. That is how low blood pressure and caffeine comes into picture somewhere. But if you are having coffee, green coffee, for hypertension, it does help. Again,
Okay.
if you are in a hypertensive crisis, it will not help you. That is not when caffeine would be advised. So it's stages. Um the other point is when someone has lower blood pressure and when they have coffee, it has milk in it. Most of the times, what I have observed is it has milk and sugar both in it. Now, whenever there is hypoglycemia, even the blood pressure dips down.
Okay.
So that also is a contributing factor when you have coffee with sugar, one because of caffeine and the other because of sugar, you are getting it back up.
Okay.
What about the hormonal changes that occur, especially in menopause and all? Does it have any effect on hypertension?
Yes, ma'am. So, uh, premenopausal as well as postmenopausal, because of the estrogen levels changing, there are a lot of changes in the blood pressure as well. You will see hypertension being more common. The cardioprotective effect that estrogen has goes down. So yes, that is there, and that's why we say that by the time you are 35, even though the menopause has not set in, you should start changing the lifestyle. You should start having something that is healthier and start exercise. I think now it's been got down to 25 years because by
Mm.
30 the bone depletion starts. So it but blood pressure levels do fluctuate, and for postmenopausal we do try and give something that is more complex carbs, more omega-3 to get the blood pressure levels under control.
Okay. How about the magnesium supplementation in the premenopause state?
Magnesium, again, I would say that it's a micronutrient. So a daily supplement maybe is not what is required, and most of the magnesium supplements that come, they're about 120 milligrams each capsule.
Yeah.
So maybe once or twice a week, yes, can be given if magnesium deficiencies are there. These deficiencies most of the time are seen where people do not have a balanced diet, they do not have their whole grains well. Those are the cases where you will find the deficiencies,
Okay.
and they will not probably reflect directly on the blood pressure levels.
Mm.
The first one of the first indications I have seen is they have a lot of cravings,
Right.
craving for sugar, craving for chocolate, no, the sweet cravings. I've usually seen people with magnesium deficiency going having those cravings, and that's a probably a red mark for us that we should think about magnesium.
Okay.
But only for hypertension, maybe I would not say that you need to have a magnesium supplement
Okay.
for that.
Okay.
Magnesium deficiency is comparatively very rare, I
Very
think,
rare.
because
Very
magnesium
rare.
is present everywhere.
Yeah.
Unless they're taking too much of processed food, probably, I think.
Yes.
That depletes magnesium, most of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, doctor.
Any
We
more?
are done with the questions.
Hmm.
Yeah. We can go with the take home message.
Okay. It's a really great, Mansi. As I said before, every word you spoke is of much value for us in presentation and the questions we asked you. I mean, as you are speaking, we are getting more and more questions. I think one session with you will not be sufficient for us. At least we need to have 2 to 3 sessions with you, but we'll give a gap before we call you again. Yeah. So the most important and highlighting point that you have mentioned is balanced diet. Balanced diet is the key for key for hypertension, controlling the hypertension or managing the hypertension. When we also highlighted on regional foods, which is very very important, and instead of following other guidelines, we have to have our own guidelines uh, pertaining to regional availability of the foods and uh, and of course our lifestyle and our of course I think the body composition also matters a lot when we compare to other races. Our body composition is totally different, and TLC is one thing, but I read it as tender loving care. I think that is required for all conditions. So another important point is to not to restrict cholesterol. I keep the same thing I keep telling my patients. The moment they realize that their cholesterol is high, then they say, "I'm not taking this oil, that oil." I say, just don't stop. Just start taking more fiber, more whole grains into your diet. So do not restrict cholesterol. And I think Indians, as such, will not take so much of cholesterol. We are majorly vegetarians. Even non-vegetarian people they take maybe once or twice, but daily intake of non-vegetarian is not there for us. So that's one important point. And consume whole egg until warranted. That's another point. Then we have to think beyond balanced diet as well. Beyond diet, the points that you have said about chlorogenic acid and other important points. These are very very important. Is pertaining especially to hypertension, and about the garlic, 2 to 4 hours of once you take how many pieces you said 2 to 4 pieces,
Four,
it keeps you for two
two
to
to
six
six.
hours of normal tension will be there. I think normalcy will maintain. uh, and you also said to maintain the gap for green tea and anticoagulant medication. This is very important. So this also indirectly tells us food is the medicine.
Yes, very
So
true.
If you really plan the diet well and consciously take food, then I don't think people would require any anticoagulants or any medication for hypertension as such. Maybe they can treat the root cause of the causing hypertension, but I think hypertension per se, balanced diet and exercise is most important. I mean, all your uh, our conversation is leading to that. And I also mentioned about the importance of sugars. How to restrict the sugar? We have to restrict because it contributes to vasoconstriction. And also, you highlighted the importance of potassium. Especially, I think green leafy vegetables have a lot of potassium, and they also taste like salt. I
Yes.
think adding
Yes.
green leafy vegetables to the recipe will help a lot, reducing the salt otherwise. So I believe these are very important take-home messages, and something very new for dietitians to follow and to also give advice to the patients. So by one small question before we end. Uh, do really people get their blood pressure raised when they get angry?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, if you look at the variation, they may not go into a hypertensive state, but the blood pressure fluctuations are there not only with anger, but with extreme emotions.
Yeah. Okay.
So with any extreme emotion, blood pressure fluctuations are there. Even with extreme grief, the
Hmm.
blood pressure does fluctuate and rise. Most of the times, there's a rise in blood pressure.
Can it also come down
Yes, ma'am.
low BP for like becoming very low and depressed? Does it come
Yes.
down? Any have you seen any cases like that?
Usually, I've seen this in chronic cases. So when there is chronic grief, chronic depression, those cases, yes, some of them the blood pressure does go down. But most
Mhm.
of the times, it's been an upward trend that we see.
Okay.
Okay. So last question before we wind up, Evelyn is asking again, how many actions of non-veg are maximum to be taken in a week?
So again, probably only we as Indians can ask that question, because apart from us, if you look at a lot of other cultures, they would have non-veg thrice a day. Uh, Again, it gets us back to our basics of nutrition, that look at the total protein intake. And then you give the patient a choice. You want to have fish, you want to have chicken, you want to have, okay, red meat is out of the question, so I will not say beef and pork, but you want to have soya, you want to have paneer, you want to have curd, milk, pulses, a combination of pulses and grains. So ultimately, it will be the total protein, and the source would be as per what the patient would uh, like.
Okay. One last question again. Garlic, you have
Mhm.
suggested garlic, right? So what form of garlic can be taken? Like that is,
Yes.
does
So
it has to be crushed, or how do you suggest?
So the best is to crush it in your mouth, because
Okay.
exposure to air will oxidize it. So put the raw, you peel it and have it raw. But again, a lot of people will not be able to do that. And that is when we say that you mix it with a chutney, you mix
Huh.
it with til, sesame seeds and stuff, and then you consume it. But raw, without cutting, put it raw, put the raw clove in your mouth. That's the best. The
Okay.
next best is have raw with something else.
Mm.
And then third, fourth, probably options would be when you put it in the dal or you
Yes,
put it in the
that's
sabji. But then the amount of garlic that you need to consume will be much more higher, because the active components have got oxidized.
right. Yeah.
We have garlic kheer, Nizam's Nawab's specialty.
Mhm. Oh.
Regularly, they used to have the desert garlic kheer
Mhm.
because Nawab wanted to live longer, and
Mm.
he want to be very virile, and then he asked the chef to make something, some nice portion for him.
Awesome.
So the chef made garlic kheer.
Oh,
Wow.
and it tastes
that's
very good.
interesting.
In fact, it
Oh,
tastes
that's
very good.
interesting.
And you cannot make out with what kind of ingredients this kheer is made. Like, it simply tastes very good, and we cannot make out the garlic.
oh,
Wow.
nice.
That's interesting.
And talking about the swords, I remembered Bajirao. I think his sword weight is about 30 kgs or so.
kgs,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Imagine the number of wars he fought with that kind of sword.
With that.
Yeah.
Very true.
It's really nice, very nice
Thank
having you, Mansi, on Tea Talks. Really enjoyed this talk.
thank you so
So,
much, ma'am. It's been a pleasure. And thank you everyone for asking the questions, because probably when you give a presentation, there are a lot of points you miss out. And I think that the Tea Talk concept itself is wonderful. And it's been an honor being here, ma'am. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Mansi, for being on Tea Talks Tuesday and giving us such a wonderful, informative, engaging session. As said by Dr. Janaki, we would like to invite you once again onto Tea Talks.
We-
Yeah. See you all for today, and see you next Tuesday, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Thank you.